Chris Edkins. I'm going to be your worship associate today. I'm a member of the worship committee and a member of this church. It's one of our traditions here at Westside Unitarian Universalist Church that periodically we have a lay-led service, and today we are blessed to have two great guest speakers, Kathleen Gibby and Michael McKinney from the Keep the Tennessee River Beautiful project, who they are our justice and generosity partners for this quarter. So thank you very much for Kathleen and Michael for joining us today. And I just also want to say we are still kind of in transition. Our office administrator, Brad Kurtz, has moved on to another opportunity, and we're doing everything with volunteers at the moment, so there's a pretty good chance that things may go wrong. So we ask that you just bear with us and give us a little bit of grace during the transition period, which I know you will, because you are awesome people. So. Okay, so welcome to Westside Unitarian Universalist Church. We are a church where who you are and the values that you embody in your everyday life are more important than the specifics of what you believe. We gather together to support each other and to support the wider community and to explore the important questions in life, like who are we and what's the point of it all, and is there anything that comes next after we pass on from this current reality, that we are all aware of. So we all have different answers in the UU Church, but we like to come together so that we can share those answers with each other and learn and grow in our spiritual understanding. So if you are here in person in the church, today we welcome you, and if you are out there in YouTube land, either watching now on the live stream or at some point in the future, we welcome you also. You are a member of this community and you are just as important as the people who are here with us in the room. So welcome to everybody who's with us today. I'd like to draw your attention to the announcements that are in your orders of service today. I don't think there's any particular ones that I need to draw attention to, except to say a couple of things, I guess. Reverend Carol, our settled minister, is not with us today. She's on vacation up in Michigan. But there will be compassionate communication class today. Ryan Moyers is going to lead that class, and there also will be Earth Church at 2. If anybody's coming for Earth Church, there will be an opportunity for Earth Church people to create and curate your own experience in that meeting today. So both those things are still going on, so please stay afterwards for those. Okay, any other announcements from the floor that I don't know about? In that case, I will invite our singing bowl to ring. The flaming chalice is the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, and it's our tradition here that we light the chalice with some words. So I think I'll light the chalice, and then we have a reading from our hymnal, number 528, which is "I've Known Rivers." I've known rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I've bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo, and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I have known rivers, ancient, dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. That quote's from Langston Hughes. And it's also our tradition right now to light candles for something that is good that's going on in the world and for something that's challenging. So for the challenging thing today, I'd like for us to remember all the people that are affected by Hurricane Layla that passed through the Hawaiian Islands this week, and the mudslides and landslides that have been going on there. And for the candle of good news, I'm told that voter engagement is greatly up, and lots of people are registering to vote and preparing to vote in the midterms this year. So I'm hoping that may be a positive, that if more people can get involved in our political system, then sensible heads will prevail. So. Okay, so this is my opportunity to tell you about our Justice and Generosity programs, and as I've already mentioned, the Keep the Tennessee River Beautiful organization is our Justice and Generosity partner for this quarter. Here you go, the information is up on our screen up here. And of course that is what our service is all about today. You'll hear a lot more about the program and all the wonderful things that they are doing. But I'd also like to let you know we do not pass a plate or anything like that nowadays in the church. But if you do want to donate to either to Westside to help keep the lights on and the doors open, or to our Justice and Generosity partners, we have a couple of boxes at the back of the sanctuary. You can put cash in there or checks in those boxes. One is for Westside and the other one is for our partners. And there's also QR codes on there, so if you want to make a cashless donation through technology. So thank you for all you guys out there do for the church, and for keeping our staff paid and for paying our bills and everything. So thank you very much. So without further ado, it actually says in the order of service, and this is my fault, that just Dr. Michael McKinney is our speaker, but Kathleen Gibby is going to come up and do the presentation first, and then she will hand off to Dr. McKinney, and we'll take it from there. So please welcome Dr. Are you a doctor? Please welcome Kathleen Gibby.
Trying to promote me. All right, let me see if I can, okay. That was probably, can you hear me okay? Everybody hear me okay? Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity, Chris, and to Elizabeth for helping to line this up, and really grateful that Westside has chosen our organization again for your program this quarter, and we're so grateful. And I'm really excited to share with you. Last year I got to speak. I'm really excited to share with you now our progress that we've been experiencing over the last year, thanks to some in part to your support. So without further ado, we'll go into it. So as mentioned, I'm Kathleen Gibby. I'm the Executive Director of Keep the Tennessee River Beautiful, and we can do the next slide. There's going to be a lot of slides. So. Our mission is to educate and inspire others to create a beautiful, clean, healthy Tennessee River so it can be enjoyed for generations to come. Next slide there. And really just have to say that when I got this job, I was thinking in my mind that this would be so fantastic. The Tennessee River, I grew up in Knoxville. The Tennessee River is so gorgeous. And in my mind, the Tennessee River looked like what it looks like in Knoxville. And to my very fortunate surprise, it's nothing new, but to me it was, but the Tennessee River is one of the most geographically and biologically diverse river systems in the world. It's actually the most biodiverse river system in North America. So I thought I'd go through a few slides and just show the different topographical beauty. Just a minute. But yes, as I mentioned, the Tennessee River is the most biodiverse river system in North America. Just to give perspective, there are 230 species of fish in the Tennessee River. That's double what's in the Mississippi, which is 3.5 times longer than the Tennessee. We can go to the next slide. And then I always like to share the other side of it, because you can't help everyone appreciate something from necessarily the green side. There's this other green that people are interested in. And so, but the Tennessee River itself generates $12 billion a year just in the recreation industry. And that's actually an older number that was announced before COVID. So you imagine everybody that's been going on the river since then. I expect that number is much higher. But with tourism being the second largest industry in the state of Tennessee, this river system, why are all these people coming to visit it? It's because of its beauty. And why is it so beautiful? Because of a very delicate ecosystem. So it behooves us all to take care of this ecosystem to help hold up our economy and these jobs that have been generated throughout the region over the years. We can go to the next slide. Really quickly, I'll just go over bullet points of Keep the Tennessee River Beautiful. We are the first Keep America Beautiful affiliate in the country to focus solely on a river. We started in 2016, and we've already done 271 cleanups. Last year, we had 46 cleanups. We travel the entire 7-state Tennessee River watershed, and we've now had 5,500 volunteers. Last year, I was telling you that we had this goal to hit 1 million pounds of trash. We did reach that goal in October, so we're really proud of that. So since we've formed, and basically since we put our first boat in the water in 2019, we've had 1 million pounds of trash removed. It's actually at 1.1 now. So we can go to the next slide. Chapper Gracke, he started the national nonprofit Living Lands and Waters. You can go to the next slide. I saw him speak in an event when I was at the city of Knoxville, and I said, "You've got to come to Knoxville." And he said, "I love Knoxville, go Vols." And so he said, it costs a lot to get our barge all the way down to Knoxville, so you'll have to come up with something that, that makes it a bigger scale event. So we came up with this idea of doing the entire Tennessee River tour. That was held in 2015, and TVA and Keep Tennessee Beautiful through TDOT funds actually sponsored this tour. When he got to the end, he sat down with both agencies and said, "This is the most beautiful river system I've ever been on. You cannot let this be a one-time campaign." And so they put their heads together and came up with the idea of forming our nonprofit. And so that's how we got started. So we can go to the next slide. So for those who don't know too much about watersheds and how they work, when we're having river cleanups and people are pulling all this trash into the bags, they're like, "This is terrible that people throw trash down in our river." And that is terrible when people do that. But the fact is that 80% of our litter was originally littered on land and gets washed into our waterways through our storm drain systems. And then on top of that, we're all connected by water. And that's where I really wanted to focus on the pillar of interdependence. Is that the correct? Yeah, interdependence. We're all here, right, because we settled where the water was. And I think, over time, we've kind of forgotten that. Much like anything else, we take all of our commodities for granted. And, the river is very much not a commodity, but it gets treated that way. And so I try to really emphasize, Keep the Tennessee River Beautiful tries to emphasize wherever we go that the litter in our water was originally littered on land. So I know that you guys last year, you adopted this highway or this river or this mile along here. And so when you're helping to pick up around here, there's a creek nearby, right? And so that washes into the creek, and then that washes into our river system. And then beyond that, I don't know if you know this, but Volunteer Landing in downtown Knoxville is actually considered an international port. And that's because you can connect all the way through the Ohio River to the Mississippi down to the Gulf. So technically, there's a chance that there's trash in that floating trash island in the Gulf that came all the way from Knoxville. So you guys are actually helping to protect our waterways worldwide. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And bear in mind with me, the Tennessee River watershed dips into 7 states, but it doesn't encompass the entire state. But I thought this would be a really good example for us to think about. So the state of Tennessee, that's actually Norris Lake. The state of Tennessee generates and has 13 million tons of trash a year. And the next slide, the state of Alabama has 9, is that saying 9? I'm getting to where I might need glasses.
Almost 10.
Yeah, almost 10 million tons of trash. Okay, and then the next slide, Mississippi. I actually took that photo. That bird is a bald eagle flying off in the sunset. How crazy is that? 3.1 million tons of trash. Keep going. 4.7 in the state of Kentucky. So those are the 4 states that the main stem of the river touches, and then there's 3 tributary states. So the next one, Virginia, 22 million tons. Next one, 13.7, that's Fontana Lake in North Carolina. 16.5 tons in Georgia, and that's Lake Chattooga. If you haven't been there, it's gorgeous. Again, not all of that trash being managed is within the watershed, but it gives you perspective of what could happen if we didn't have these systems and these services that our local governments are providing. They really are heroes. So I just ask you all to please make sure when you're throwing your trash away to make sure that your lids are secured, or if you're driving it somewhere, to make sure it's secured so it can't blow out. So we can pat. Next one. So in 2015, at the same time of the Tennessee River Tour, a scientist named Dr. Andreas Pfaff, he's from Germany, he swam the entire Tennessee River, and so therefore I call him a jock scientist. But he took water samples as he went along, and when I started this job in 2019, February of 2019, he released the finding of his studies that found the Tennessee River was the most microplastic polluted river studied to date. And studied to date is an important caveat. However, it did prove to have more microplastics than the Yangtze River in China. So that's obviously a call to action right when I started my job. So this is something that we really emphasize with our volunteers. If we go to the next slide. So we host, and next slide, yes. We host river cleanups. This is actually on Nickajack Lake. That is 3 hours worth of river cleanup work with volunteers. Nickajack Lake, I was actually told by a TVA reservoir lead that I would not find trash, that it's too clean on the Nickajack Lake, which is, I think, the 4th lake in the Tennessee River. There are 9 lakes on the Tennessee River. And the reality is that we have all these floods, and so the trash gets pushed back into the woods, out of sight, and then when the water recedes, the brush holds it back there. So it's just sitting there until there's another flood. But meanwhile, the weather is breaking it down into microplastics, and so that becomes a concern for our drinking source. We go to the next slide, please. I'm really proud because as we started to do our programs, these dots represent every program, whether it's river cleanup, adopt a river mile, adopt a storm drain, electric litter skimmers, cigarette receptacles. There's one more. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but if you look, our programs are taking shape of the river. And this is actually kind of like a general looking at a battle plan. Now I look for the gaps, and that's where we go host our next cleanup. Okay, so we can go to the next one, please. So as I mentioned, we have volunteer river cleanups. Are we doing okay on time? Okay, I'll hustle. Okay, we'll take volunteers. We travel across the whole 7-state Tennessee River watershed. We can do next slide. And here's a good example of some of the items found at the river cleanup. So I love this photo on the left because it's a great example of just about most coves that we scout ahead of time to take volunteers to clean. If you look in the bottom of that photo, there's 2 box turtles. I wish they were less camera shy, but they weren't feeling it that day. But I do like to think as we're cleaning there and you see hoof prints and possum paw prints, I love to think about how confused the animals will be that evening when they come back to go get a drink of water and all the trash is gone. But we find a lot of dock foam and a lot of tires. I always say tires are the biggest environmental bang for your buck. So a lot of rural areas, they're very expensive to dispose of tires. So people think, well, they're fish attractors, so I'll just throw it in the river, and then that'll be a good nesting area for fish. And that is true, but would you like to eat a fish that was raised in a ring of slowly released metals and oils? So you're supposed to say, no, yeah, no. But that's why I always feel so good when we're pulling those tires out. If we could go to the next slide. Here's a before and after photo. Usually most coves are clean within 20 to 30 minutes, so most of our volunteers do come back. It's very addicting. All community service is very important, but this work is like instant gratification, so it's a lot of fun. Okay, next slide. And we work with all kinds of people. We do cleanups with corporations where they pay their employees to do volunteer work. We have people who just are good souls and volunteer their Saturday to go clean up other trash. We work with youth groups, so we even have companies that have heavy equipment and help us. A lot of times we'll use our boats as trailers as well. So we can go to the next slide. The most trash removed in one cleanup was working with Clayton Home Building Group, 31,000 pounds of trash. But that was because the month before, another factory they were competing with removed 28,000 pounds of trash. So they went and scouted out the whole lake. We had 60 volunteers come out with us on the water, and then there were others who took their personal trucks and drove around and picked up trash along the shoreline. So we had to order 4 more dumpsters for that day. Next slide. And then just a quick look at our scale. We're evening out now at about 200,000 pounds of trash a year, and that's just the capacity with us traveling and everything. And for us, it really is more about education than it is about removing the trash from the waterways, as important as that is. But as you see, these are areas that even people on the water every single day, people with their beautiful fiberglass fishing boats, they will not dare to take their boats into the coves where we take our tanks. And so there's a lot of trash that we have. So many fishermen tell us, you're not going to find trash today. It's a gorgeous river. And it is. But this is kind of lurking in the shadows. And so this is something that we are very proud to daylight to the public. And so the photos and the statistics and everything are really helping to open up people's eyes. We need to change our habits, in society. Next slide. I'm going to go through this really quickly. So we do a lot of natural disaster cleanup. We've got that's actually a marina on the top left that was marooned on an island. It's actually one of the most powerful visuals I've ever seen of the power of water, where this forest was actually decimated as the marina came through, and now it's in the middle of the island, and it's just slowly falling apart, and we are slowly but surely gathering pieces. Over on the top right, Hurricane Helene knocked that dock. It's a 36-foot long dock. It ended up being, we had to have it cut into 3 pieces by a welder, and ended up being 14,000 pounds. It's like really heavy iron frame and concrete surface and dock foam underneath. And then on bottom left, that's actually an industrial. You see those farms where you drive around and see those massive sprinklers with the massive tires. So a flood on Kentucky Lake actually pulled that in. It's actually about a 1,500-pound tire, and we actually had gravity and loose rocks in our favor, and then we used some good old lever and hoisting techniques, and then I don't know if you can see, we have a very strong volunteer in the middle there. I'm pretty sure he should have been a professional athlete. And then the bottom right was Douglas Lake, which has received all of the debris from Hurricane Helene. We had a weekend where we did 3 cleanups on Douglas Lake, and our volunteers produced 40,000 pounds of trash out of those cleanups. Okay, super fast. I'm going to skip through our programs, but we have, this is worth saying. We do other cleanups too that are really unique. So it's not just cleaning with our boats. So if you know of an area that's related to the water but may not be able to handle our flat bottom boats, we can still try to find solutions for that. Next slide. And then that was just a cleanup we did this summer. I'm going to go through really fast. If you could just skip to the mussel, there's one that's, we have a free Adopt a River Mile program, storm drain program, Pledge for Rivers, cigarette litter. Oh, here we go. Okay, so our muscle movement initiative. So back in 2019, when I started this job, I got to go to a conference in Baltimore, and I happened to learn about their Adopt an Oyster program they had in Chesapeake Bay. And I thought, wouldn't that be wonderful if we could do something like that in our area with freshwater mussels? And when you have an idea that doesn't leave you over years, you know that it's something that's meant to happen. So one day, I happened to be in a meeting with Dr. Michael McKinney on something else, and we kind of got in these conversations about it, and I just said, I would love to be able to do a program for Adopt a Mussel, but we don't have an expert on the subject. And he said, I actually teach courses on freshwater mussels. And I said, well, that's wonderful. I think if we could get a sponsor, I think we could get TDOT to sponsor it if we could prove that they filter out microplastics. And Dr. McKinney said, you know, there have been studies that have been proving that for a while, but I had a grad student that just proved that's happening on the Tennessee River last year. And I said, well, we just need a professor or somebody that'd be willing to guide us through it all. And he said, I'll be happy to do it. And so I think it was in about 2 months we had the program on the move and funded. So it's a 5-part initiative. We'll go through this really quickly to let Dr. McKinney come up and talk about the really interesting stuff. If you can go to the next slide. Yep, Adopt a Mussel. So we actually have concrete silos that juvenile mussels are placed into. TWRA provided the propagated young mussels, and they're in these concrete silos, filtering the water, but they're also protected while they grow to be more robust before they're released. And we actually work with our adoptees and send them notices saying since they've adopted their mussel, it's filtered out X amount of gallons of mussels. So people give a small donation fee. They get to name their mussel, and as long as it's not something offensive, we take that name on. We give it a little caricature, because one thing for sure is that mussels just don't quite touch your heart the way a sea turtle does, for example. So if you go to the next slide, we've had a few that have been fun. We have Quentin Scelentino. We have Minnie Pearl, and Dr. McKinney, what was the name of your adopted mussel?
Patrick.
Shellfish. Patrick Shellfish from SpongeBob theme. So it makes it a lot of fun, and we've really seen a lot of energy from that. But we've now had, I can't read that right there, but I think we're at 32 adopted mussels, and we actually keep updating everybody, so I encourage you to check that out on our website. We can go to the next slide. The second part of our Mussel Movement Initiative is the Mussel Fest, and we've held 2 in Seven Island State Birding Park, but it's a great opportunity. My favorite feature of that is that Conservation Fisheries comes and they have 2 tanks filled with muddy river water, and they put mussels into one of those, and over the whole day you get to see how much cleaner the water gets. Next slide. Then we have a mussel shell inventory. So as we're going and doing our cleanups, we're taking pictures of all the mussel shells we're seeing, and then we're working with Dr. McKinney and TWRA on identifying those. And so it is kind of informing more, because we're going to far reaches that most people don't go. We're able to share more information. I encourage you to check that out, because the pictures are so gorgeous. I had no idea how, just like the river, I had no idea how diverse and how the range of beauty that there was of mussels. Okay, the next slide. And then finally, the value of a mussel. We're trying to really help people understand why these creatures are so important. They are considered keystone species or cornerstone species, which means if they go, the other species in the river go. Everybody depends on these mussels. So we're starting to pose questions to Dr. McKinney, and for once the professor is getting some homework. And we ask him a question, and he goes and works with different groups in the university. I think you worked with the College of Business on this last one. And so the first question we posed was, if all of our mussels went away, how much would we have to pay someone to filter the water to keep it as clean as it is now, thanks to mussels? So Dr. McKinney may speak to that a little bit more. Okay, great. I don't want to steal his thunder, but that's pretty much my piece of it. Now it's time to introduce Dr. McKinney, and just thank him so much for making all of this possible.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Mike McKinney, as you know. I guess we need to switch our slides. But I've been at UT for 42 years. I run the environmental science major there. And first of all, I want to just start off by saying thank you for all the great work you do in this church. I'm familiar with it. But yeah, why mussels? First off, I want to ask y'all, raise your hand if you've ever seen a freshwater mussel. That's more than I usually get. They're not very charismatic. They're nicknamed living rocks. But I want to be very clear at the outset. Every scientist says his or her study animal is the best. But freshwater mussels really are incredibly important. Number one, they are the most endangered group of animals in the state. The most endangered, much more than birds, mammals, fish. Over 70% of all mussel species in Tennessee are extinct or going extinct. And you can probably figure out why. It's because they're filter feeders, so they take pollution out of the water. And so whenever humans dump waste in the rivers, they die pretty quickly. So they're really important ecologically, and they keep our water clean. In fact, I want to just emphasize that the main reason the Tennessee water is so dirty and is so cloudy and is one of the most polluted rivers in the United States is because the mussels are gone. So right at the outset, they are the most endangered, much more so. The problem is they're not very charismatic. So I jumped at the chance to join the board of this organization because what Kathleen does that I'm terrible at, like most scientists, we're terrible at marketing. We're terrible at, we're boring. We're nerds. We just dive into statistics and people just walk away. But these animals need a lot of attention and they need a lot of love. And so I'm going to tell you about them and really hope raise your awareness on why these animals are not just important, but they're really, really fascinating animals. I also want to point out that guess which state has more freshwater mussel species than any other state? Tennessee and Alabama are fighting over that name, that title, but it's either Tennessee or Alabama. We're certainly in the top two. We have over 100 species of mussels. That's more than the entire continent of Europe, and that's because the mountains here, because of evolution, these multiple mussel species evolved over millions of years. So we have a lot of diversity. It's disappearing fast, and it's the main reason why our water is so cloudy and so dirty. And what we're trying to do with Keep Tennessee River Beautiful is fix it. And what I'm about to tell you is kind of a sad story because they're really in bad shape, but these are people who are working to fix it, not just complain about it, right? So this is some examples of some of the mussels that we have here. They get to be, they get to be almost a foot long. They're amazing animals. They go by all sorts of cool names like the rainbow mussel, the giant floater, the heel splitter. They have very colorful names. Next slide, please. When they're happy and healthy, which they usually aren't around here, they burrow, they have a foot, they burrow into the sediment. Basically, their posterior sticks above the sediment, and they pull plankton and pollutants and microplastics out of the water, and that's how they eat, of course. So if you're walking in the river, you may run into them. You can just see a ridge sticking up over the sediment. You can see some of the names, the pimpleback and the elephant. They have those pimples on their shell to help keep them in the sediment. Next slide, please. So anatomically, I don't want to give you a big boring biology lesson, but you can see on the lower right there, that's where the action is. Those gills, they're kind of sticky, and they take particulate matter, they take the plankton and the organic material out of the water, including microplastics. So an adult like that, that's maybe 8 inches long, will filter about 8 gallons of water per day. 8 gallons of water. We had billions of these things in the river doing 8 gallons of water per day. And that's why the water used to be crystal clear, and that's why it's not, because most of them are gone. People don't realize it, but the only place you're going to find mussels are in really pristine areas of Tennessee. And that's why the water is so dirty. And you can see that cilia there in the upper right where the sticky part is. It's taking out these the pollutants. I'll just jump to the end and tell you, we did try to monetize and calculate how much we've lost by losing 1 billion mussels, and we've estimated that they in 4 years they filter about $1 trillion worth of water in terms of wastewater treatment. So we've lost billions and billions of dollars in clean water treatment. You can go ahead, next slide. So what good is a mussel? I talk about this a lot because they are not that charismatic, but they're the key to the food chain. They may have seen muskrats eat mussels, but catfish eat mussels and birds. Obviously, they filter the water, as we've talked. They're what we call ecosystem engineers, so they create habitat for fish and lots of other species of animals. They're bioindicators. We study their tissue and look for things like DDT accumulation, microplastic accumulation. So they go right off the bat, they can tell you how clean the water is. Next slide, please. And so we call these ecosystem services, and we're always trying to measure them so we can monetize these important ecological functions. But you can see what Kathleen was talking about there on the upper right. The aquarium on the left has no mussels. The one on the right has a few mussels in it, and after 24 hours, you can see how much they've taken out of the water. We actually did this experiment in my lab, and it only took them about an hour to clean up the entire aquarium. So you can imagine how clean the Tennessee River would be if we had billions of mussels back. And how do you get them back? That's a great question, because first you have to clean the water. I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end, but feel free to ask me questions, because Kathleen, they're trying to bring them back, but it's like everything else in life. It's easier said than done, right? For one thing, the dams are another big problem with mussels. I want to mention that by damming the river, we made fast-flowing waters into lakes, right? And turns out most mussels like fast water because they breathe, they need the oxygen. So people don't realize but by building all those dams, we cause the extinction of a lot of these mussels. So again, I don't think anybody's going to take the mussels dams down, but that's what we would need to do to return a lot of these species back. Okay, next slide, please. Just some examples. You may have seen mussel middens down there in the lower right. Animals will pile these things up as they eat them. I've seen muskrats and raccoons gorge themselves on mussels. You may be wondering, can you eat mussels? Yes, you can. The Cherokee Indians have these big middens on the archaeological sites along the Tennessee River. But they don't really taste very good. They only ate them for ceremonial purposes. During the Civil War, the soldiers used to eat mussels, but they often got sick, and they complained about how bad the food was. So they're really not very tasty. They're nutritious, but not very tasty. Next slide. And that's just an example of what we've already talked about. So next slide. So these are just some of the, so one of the things that I do in my lab, we study what these pollutants are removed, and you can see they remove harmful algae, nitrogen, phosphorus, E. coli, like pathogens, microplastics, metals, pharmaceuticals. All these things are a really big problem in the Tennessee River, and in case you don't know it, you get your drinking water from the Tennessee River, and it still has a lot of stuff in it because the treatment plants don't remove a lot of things. They focus mainly on the sewage. The mussels can help us with that problem. So next slide, please. So I want to focus on microplastics because it's a big part of what the litter is composed of around here. Over 70% is often plastic. Raise your hand if you've heard of microplastics. So, you know, Americans have more plastic than any other country. We use it in our bags. Just coming over here, I bought a candy bar, and she wanted to put it in a plastic bag. So no, I don't want a plastic bag. You know, it's in our shirts, it's in our paint. But as it breaks down over a few decades, these microplastics get in the water, and then they get in your body, right? And I don't know if you know this, but this is a pretty well documented fact. I was originally skeptical, but I've done a lot of research on this. But Americans actually ingest a credit card's worth of plastic every 2 to 4 weeks. So just imagine that. You chomp down on your Discover card or your American Express card, and so we'll say that's 2 weeks worth. Now, you know, a lot of that's coming in produce, packaging, you're breathing a lot of it. A lot of it's in your drinking water. We looked at what microplastic is found in bottled water. You know, you buy those bottles at Walgreens. One of those bottles had over 1,000 microplastic particles in it. It was shedding off the side of the water bottle. So I don't want you to freak out because it's not going to kill you right away. But what we know, because I mean, my dog eats plastic, right? We go to the dog park and it comes out the other end, right? And when you eat plastic, it comes out the other end, most of it. But some of it stays. And I have a friend who works at the Vanderbilt Medical School, and she dissects cadavers, and she said she finds about a half a teaspoon of plastic in the average brain of an older person. person so this stuff, and it's in every organ. I mean, I think that, next slide maybe, I think it might have it. Yeah, so it's every organ of everybody that we've ever studied. So but it's inert. That's why we like it. It's stable, but it's also a co-contaminant because it carries stuff with it. It carries heavy metals, it carries toxins, it carries bacteria. So it's not good for you. And so my plea to you is at this church, please get plastic out of your life. I tell this to my students, please quit using much more plastic than you need. Or my friends over on the agriculture campus are working on a new kind of plastic that's made from plants. So you probably heard of biodegradable plastic. It's made out of plant starch. So use that because it breaks down really quickly, and that's a really good solution to it. Because your average plastic right now, you know what it's made from? Petroleum, which is carcinogenic and not good. So again, just think about cutting. We're not going to get away from plastic. It's part of our lives, but think about using less. Like turn down all those bags they keep trying to give you at the store that you don't need, and so on. Or recycle, of course. Next slide. So why are mussels so highly endangered more than any other group? They can't move around. Birds fly away when you pollute the lake, but mussels can't move. They're stuck, so they just die. The only time they're mobile is when they're larvae. So an adult will live his or her entire existence with just a few square feet. So if you pollute that lake, they're just going to die. Secondly, because they're filter feeders, they take in all that pollution, so they can't really reject it quickly enough. And this is the coolest thing of all, I think, I like to talk about. They have a really cool life cycle. So if you could go to the next slide. Oh, sorry. We'll get to that in a minute. This is some of the causes of extinctions. So that's the three biological reasons. But what have humans been doing to these animals to cause extinction? You may recognize that. Anybody here ever have clothing or buttons made out of pearls from mussels, pearls or shell? So here's what they would take these shells and they would during the Civil War. This is how they made buttons. So you find a lot of Civil War costumes made out of mussel shells. But they also have to make pearls. And that's a big industry here. I had somebody who was raised in Powell. And they used to go down to the river after church every Sunday, and they would look for mussels. And I said, well, how many mussels did you have to open to kill? And you kill them when you do that, to find a pearl. And he said, 200 or 300. So they were killing hundreds of mussels, and the quality of the pearls is terrible. So this was one main cause of extinction, which is no longer legal, I'm happy to say. Go ahead and next slide, please. Another cause of extinction is the zebra mussel, an invasive species. So these zebra mussels, they're like super glue, and they attach themselves to the mussel, and they kill it so it can't open its shell. And these zebra mussels are here. They're actually right outside. I've seen them over in Farragut, the park over there. So these are a big problem here in the Tennessee River. Next slide. But here's the life cycle. This is what makes them really vulnerable to extinction, in addition to everything else. On the lower right, you have the mommy mussel and the daddy mussel. And they release the sperm and the egg, and that's a larvae called the glochidia. And that's a little tiny mussel that swims around, microscopic. And it attaches itself to the gill of a fish, and it's a parasite, and it draws the blood out of that fish. And then after a few weeks, it drops off, and then it settles into the sediment and grows for the rest of its life in that spot. So one question I always ask my students is, how on earth, why do they do this? Because this makes it really vulnerable to extinction, because when that fish goes away, when that fish becomes extinct, these things can no longer reproduce. So we have a lot of mussels, they grow to be over 100 years old. We have 100-year-old mussels that are no longer reproducing because the fish species is gone. So they're just sitting there with no way to reproduce. So why on earth would they have this really weird way of reproducing? And every single mussel species in Tennessee reproduces this way. The only difference is they have different kinds of host fish. Some mussel species, like the pimpleback, will use bass. Some mussel species will use catfish. There's one that uses salamanders. But they rely on those species to transport its babies. And the reason is because if you just have your larvae swim around by itself, it's going to get pushed downstream. They live in a river, right? So the only way they can disperse their babies upstream is by hitchhiking on fish. So it's a really interesting biological reason, but it makes them really vulnerable to extinction. So if you can, so they've developed, as a biologist, I love natural history. Go ahead, next slide. They've developed all these really interesting natural history stories. So that little fishy-looking thing there, you maybe have heard of this, but that's the lamp mussel, pocketbook mussel. But it looks like a fish, right? But what happens is a bass or another fish will come up and try to eat that. And then as a female mussel, she will inject all of her larvae into the gills of that fish. So there are all these really interesting little natural history reasons that these guys did this. Okay, next slide. Here you can see freshwater mussels are indeed among the most endangered species. So compared to birds, which are only 14% endangered, you've got mussels at 70%. Next slide. And as I mentioned, next slide, we have an enormous amount. In fact, we have the most mussel diversity of the entire world in North America. And within North America, Tennessee and Alabama are the highest. So again, tragically, 70% of these in our state are threatened with extinction. Hopefully we can fix that. So next slide. So this kind of gets to what we briefly mentioned. One effort to kind of reverse this is trying to figure out how much work these animals do and monetize it. So if you could just go through the next slide, maybe. Next slide. And actually, right there is good. So I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of numbers, but you can see there on the bottom, they do about $1 trillion. This is a very rough estimate, of course. Roughly $1 trillion worth of water filtration in 4 years. So this is an effort to kind of make people wake up and see that this is affecting our health, this is affecting recreation and lots of other impacts because, we're losing these kind of ecosystem services that would otherwise give us really clean water. Next slide. And by the way I arrived at that number is I looked up how much it costs for a wastewater treatment plant to filter the water, and so I just converted that into mussel filtration rates. But mussels obviously do a lot more than just filter water for us to drink. So, as I said, they're important food sources. They're habitat. They're bioindicators. So, they do a lot of work for us. Next slide. So in terms of solutions, Kathleen already talked a lot about the programs we're doing with KTRB. Other things I would say that you could do or that we could do as a state or as in the federal government, do something about the dams. We're not going to take these dams down, obviously, but there are lots of areas where small dams are being taken down. That's going to really help mussel biology and mussel ecology. The biggest problem is pollution. The biggest reason, I should say, I have 3 students who work on mussels right now, and we take baby mussels from hatcheries, and we release them into clean waters, and like the Pigeon River up near Newport, and the Powell and the Clinch, and we tag them with electronic transponders, and we track them. And what we're finding is that we're very successful releasing baby mussels in areas where the water's clean. That's the good part of the story. The bad part is most of the water in Tennessee is so dirty that they die when we release them. So we tried releasing some in the lower parts of the Tennessee River, around Knoxville, and even here in Farragut, they die pretty quickly. So really to bring these animals back, it's kind of a catch-22, right? You can't have clean water if you have mussels, but you can't have mussels if you have clean water. But I just want to let you know that's where we're going with this, and hopefully efforts to clean Tennessee waters will improve. Right now, the Tennessee waters are really dirty, as Kathleen has been talking about. It's not just because of litter, but with all the development we have here in Knox County, I think you probably know this, but the water quality is degrading. We're having more sedimentation from all the construction. We have a lot of other stuff going on. So development's great, economic growth is great, but it's having a big impact on our water supply. So we have to clean that up first. Okay, I guess that's all. Do we have questions, Chris? Or Kathleen, you want to come up and see if... Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we have a little bit of time for some questions, maybe 5 minutes, if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask.
Is it safe to eat the mussels? Because they're collecting all these pollutants. Do people go fishing for mussels and want to eat them? You said they weren't tasty, so maybe that's part of the answer to that.
So for the is this on? For the benefit of people online, the question is, are the mussels safe to eat?
Yeah, no. I'm actually working with the vet school with a veterinarian, one of the few veterinarians in the U.S. who studies mussel pathology. And they have a lot of, she's finding a lot of parasites. Because the mussels are not healthy, they have a lot of worms and parasites and bacteria, in addition to the stuff they accumulate. I mean, you could almost certainly eat one and you might get sick, probably not kill you, but you certainly wouldn't want a steady diet. Great question. I'll get you next. I have to be right with you.
Okay, I totally get the fact that I'm oversimplifying this whole statement that I'm giving, or question. Is your program or programs like yours also looking at other states that have had and already conquered similar type projects? And the reason I'm asking that is because I'm from Southern Maryland. And the oyster industry is over the roof. And they had a very similar problem like what you're talking about in the Potomac River. Do you all look to them to see how they did it instead of trying to reinvent the whole wheel? What can you, and then maybe even expand upon what other, there might be, like you were saying, the Powell River, they might have light years ahead of Maryland. I don't know these things.
No, that's a great question. The short answer is yes. We coordinate a lot with those kind of folks. In fact, Kathleen's idea for it came from that area. So a lot of the stuff that we do in terms of outreach is based on the marine stuff. The big problem is marine shellfish kind of have it easier because they have an open ocean and unconfined area, and the ocean is much larger and more dynamic. Freshwater watersheds are much more fragile. So the ocean's a big place, and but great question.
What's the difference between mussels and clams?
That's a great question. What's the difference between mussels and clams? So you may have seen the Asian clam. It's this little tiny clam that you find in the creeks around here, or but clam. Short answer is a clam is like a scallop, and it's bilaterally symmetrical. So it's kind of it's a mirror image of itself. So it's a symmetrical animal, whereas mussels tend to be oblong. It's because they tend to burrow more. So there's a lot more to it than that, but generally speaking, a clam is kind of symmetrical. It's bilaterally symmetrical, like a person, whereas a mussel is more oblong.
And clams attach to things, right? Okay.
Yeah, but so do mussels. Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to add to Stefan's question. You mentioned that the pollutants have a negative impact on mussels, and I was wondering if that includes microplastics. What kind of negative impacts do we know of any negative impacts that microplastics have on mussels?
Oh, sure, yeah. So the question is, what kind of impacts do microplastics and other pollutants have on mussels? And so when it eats, it will take particles, and the stuff it doesn't like, it ejects. It ejects it as fecal material, and then it absorbs the nutrients. But when it gets overwhelmed with artificial materials like plastics and heavy metals and so on, it has a hard time filtering out all the nasty stuff, so it ends up absorbing quite a bit. And eventually, a sick mussel doesn't grow very fast, and it starts to degrade. But Yeah, basically, they try to filter it out, but generally, if they get overwhelmed, they'll just get sick and die. Like people, in the case of plastic, it's not toxic, but it's not nutritious. It's like if you just had a diet of plastic, you would starve to death because there's no nutrition.
Could you also describe, I always get that question, how do they filter out microplastics? Is it not just in the muscle at that point? Can you describe why they're able to make the microplastics sort of go away in our river?
Yes, so when they filter out the microplastic, they actually have a mucus, and they package it into a little mucus ball, and it gets passed out as fecal material, like poop. And so basically, they take microplastic out of the water column and they deposit it in the sediment as fecal material.
Okay, I have a comment and then a question. I've done a lot of camping, like on the Clinch River, like up in Hancock County, and I have seen a lot of mussels there, and the big ones. So I was happy to see that. But also, I've heard that there's been some efforts to remove some of those smaller dams, like in Beaver Creek, and I've even heard that people are seeing a more diversity of fish already. Have you noticed, or have you studied any yet to see if the mussels are making a comeback yet? I know it's been fairly recently.
At that particular location, I haven't studied that area, unfortunately, but I do know there are areas where there are improvements like that, for sure. Maybe Kathleen's been up there, but no, it's good. It's good to hear. There are local places where that's happened, and I think it's wonderful. Yeah.
We do cleanups on the Clinch River, but we haven't looked into the mussels over there yet.
Last question.
You made a passing comment that in the past, the Tennessee River was clear. How long ago is that past?
That's a great question. I would say if you really wanted to experience truly clear water, it would have been in the 1800s. We had a huge period where we logged all the forests, as you know, and the logging is what really started the decline of the water quality, because all that topsoil washed into the river. So you'd have to go back about 100, 150 years. I will also say I had a guy tell me that he was a freshman, he was a college student at UT in the 1950s, and there were still mussels on volunteer landing in the 1950s. So you could have seen mussels up until about the 50s there.
I also want to add that a colleague who works for the Wilderness Society, which is a Native American group, she actually shared with me that, 100 years ago, and definitely historically, Native Americans actually used mussels to determine that water was safe enough to drink. So they would go to look for the mussel populations, and they knew they could safely drink that water.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, we do have a plan to sing to close ourselves out, and I think what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to combine our closing hymn and our benediction, so that we sing our song, which is "I've Got Peace Like a River." Do we have the words, Lily, for the projection? Great. I also have the hymnal, but we can just sing it. It's very simple. It's just, I got peace like a river, got peace like a river, got peace like a river in my soul. Got peace like a river, peace like a river, peace like a river in my soul. And it's like joy, is it? And love like an ocean. Let's see.
How many verses do you want to do, Chris?
We're just going to do 3 verses. Okay. So it's peace like a river, joy like a fountain, love like an ocean, and then we'll just wrap up. So, and if you guys would like to stand, if you're willing and able, we'll treat this as the benediction as well. Thank you, everyone. Go in peace.